The days following the charity ball were a whirlwind of chaos and consequences. The video of Elena pushing Arya off the cliff went viral, spreading across social media like wildfire. News outlets ran stories with headlines like "Montgomery heiress returns from the dead" and "The family that tried to erase her." Elena was arrested and charged with attempted murder. Marcus Chin's financial crimes were exposed to every investor he had ever defrauded, and multiple lawsuits were filed against him within 48 hours. Richard Montgomery's empire began to crumble. Business partners withdrew their investments. The board of directors at Montgomery Corporation called for an emergency meeting. Society families who had once competed for invitations to Montgomery events now publicly distanced themselves from the scandal. Arya watched it all unfold from the safety of Damien's villa, surrounded by lawyers, financial advisors, and security personnel. She should have felt victorious. She should have felt satisfied watching her tormentors face justice. But instead, she felt hollow, as if the revenge she had craved for 6 months had left her empty rather than fulfilled. "You're not sleeping," Damien said one morning, finding her on the terrace at dawn, wrapped in a blanket and staring at the ocean. He set down a cup of coffee beside her. "You've been out here for hours." "I can't stop thinking," Arya admitted. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "I got everything I wanted. Elena is going to prison. Steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. "Who are you?" he whispered. Arya smiled. "I'm your daughter, the one you tried to erase. But I'm back, and I'm taking everything you love, just like you took everything from me." She turned to Damien, ready to leave, ready to let them stew in their ruined reputations and shattered lies. But before they could take a step, Elena lunged forward with a scream of pure rage. "I won't let you take everything." Elena shrieked, her hand reaching for a champagne bottle from a nearby table. She swung it toward Arya's head, but Damien moved faster. His arm shot out, catching Elena's wrist in an iron grip. Security guards rushed forward, pulling Elena back as she screamed and fought. "Get her out of here," Damien said coldly. "And call the police. I want her charged with attempted murder, both tonight and for the cliff incident." As Elena was dragged away, still screaming threats and curses, Arya felt something crack inside her chest. Not pain, but relief. It was over. The family that had tortured her for so long was finally facing consequences. Marcus tried to slip away in the chaos, but Damien's security blocked his path. "Not so fast, Mr. Chun. The fraud investigators would like to have a word with you." Arya watched as her former fiancé was led away, his face pale with terror. She felt nothing for him. No love, no anger, just emptiness where he had once occupied space in her heart. Richard and Victoria stood alone in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by judgmental stares and whispered condemnations. Their carefully constructed social empire was crumbling around them. "I hope it was worth it," Arya said to her father. "I hope destroying me made you happy, because now you know what it feels like to lose everything." She took Damien's arm, and together they walked out of the ballroom, leaving the wreckage of the Montgomery family behind them. The crowd pressed closer, watching the video with horrified fascination. Elena's lies were exposed for everyone to see. The final strike. Richard tried to salvage the situation. "Everyone, please, this is clearly a misunderstanding. Family matters that should be discussed privately." "I agree," Arya said. "Let's discuss family matters. Let's discuss how you've been stealing from me for 24 years. Richard's face went from white to red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "My mother's inheritance," Arya said clearly. "Catherine Hartwell Montgomery left me 40% ownership of Montgomery Corporation and her family's tech company. According to the prenuptial agreement she signed, that inheritance was to be held in trust until I turned 25. I turned 25 in 2 months, father. Which means in 2 months, I own nearly half of your company." The ballroom exploded with shocked murmurs. Richard looked like he might collapse. Victoria was frantically whispering in his ear, but he seemed unable to hear her. "You can't." "That's not," Richard stammered. "It's all legal and documented." Damien said, stepping forward. I have copies of the prenuptial agreement, the trust documents, and the incorporation papers proving Catherine's investment in Montgomery Corporation. Your lawyers have been hiding this from Arya her entire life. But the truth has a way of coming out. Arya watched her father crumble, all his power and confidence draining away. For the first time in her life, she saw him as he really was. A weak man who had built his empire on stolen wealth and crushed anyone who threatened his comfortable lies. I'm taking back what's mine, Arya said. And I'm taking control of Montgomery Corporation. You can either step down gracefully, or I can force you out through a shareholder vote. Your choice. Richard looked at her, really looked at her, for perhaps the first time in 20 years. He saw not the timid daughter he had dismissed, but a woman with. I was engaged to a man who was sleeping with my sister, Arya said clearly, making sure everyone in the ballroom could hear. A man who was embezzling money from investors while pretending to be successful. A man who was using our family for his own gain. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus's face flushed red. That's a lie. You can't prove. I can prove everything, Damien said coldly. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket. I have bank records, email correspondence, and testimony from 3 of your investors. Would you like me to share them with everyone here? Or shall we discuss how Elena faked a pregnancy to trap you into marriage? Elena let out a strangled sound. I didn't. I was pregnant. I lost the baby. You were never pregnant, Arya said, her voice like ice. We have your medical records. There was no pregnancy, no miscarriage, just lies stacked on top of more lies. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Reporters who had been covering the charity event began snapping photos and recording videos. Society ladies whispered furiously behind their hands. Business associates backed away from Richard, Marcus, and Elena as if they carried a plague. How dare you? Victoria shrieked, finally finding her voice. You ungrateful little. After everything we did for you. After everything you did to me. Arya corrected. You poisoned my father against me. You made my childhood a nightmare. You stood by while your daughter tried to murder me. Yes, murder. She turned to address the crowd. Elena pushed me off that cliff. She tried to kill me so she could take my inheritance. That's not true. Elena screamed, her perfect facade completely shattered. She fell. It was an accident. She's lying. Am I? Arya pulled out her phone and held it up. On the screen was a video, security footage from the mansion's garden cameras that Damien's team had retrieved. It showed Elena shoving Arya, showed the calculated cruelty in her expression, showed her screaming for help only. They entered the ballroom together, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, heads began to turn. Whispers started like a wave rolling through the crowd. Is that? It can't be. She's supposed to be dead. Arya walked with her head high, her hand on Damien's arm, her mother's diamonds glittering at her throat. She moved through the crowd like a queen reclaiming her throne, and the sea of people parted before her. Richard Montgomery saw her first. His face went white as a sheet, his champagne glass slipping from nerveless fingers to shatter on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent ballroom. Hello, Father, Arya said, her voice clear and strong. Surprised to see me? The reckoning begins. Victoria let out a small scream, her hand flying to her mouth. Elena, who had been laughing with a group of society ladies, turned at the sound and froze. Her face transformed from its perfect smile to absolute horror. No, Elena whispered. No, you're dead. You're supposed to be dead. Clearly, I'm not. Arya smiled, but it was a cold expression that held no warmth. Though I'm sure my death was very convenient for all of you. Tell me, did you mourn me? Or did you celebrate? Marcus had gone pale as well, his eyes darting between Arya and Elena, clearly trying to calculate how this changed his plans. Richard finally found his voice. Arya? But how? The accident. We buried. You buried an empty coffin, Damien interjected smoothly, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Because there was no body. Your daughter survived the fall, and I found her. Allow me to introduce myself. Damien Cross, CEO of Cross Enterprises. And Arya's husband. The word husband dropped like a bomb. Elena's face twisted with rage and disbelief. Marcus looked like he might be sick. Victoria clutched Richard's arm so tightly her knuckles turned white. Husband, Richard sputtered. That's impossible. You can't. You were engaged to Marcus. Stunning red dress by Valentino that hugged her curves and made her look like she owned the world. You look magnificent, Damien said from the doorway. He wore a custom black tuxedo that made him look like a dangerous prince from a fairy tale. He crossed the room and held out a velvet box. One more thing. Inside was a diamond necklace, so beautiful it took Aria's breath away. Damien, this is too much. It belonged to your mother, he said quietly. I tracked it down through an estate auction. Your father sold it after she died. I thought you should have it back. Tears pricked Aria's eyes, but she blinked them away. She couldn't cry now, not when she needed to be strong. Damien fastened the necklace around her throat, his fingers gentle against her skin. Thank you, she whispered. He met her eyes in the mirror. Are you ready? Aria thought of her father, who had abandoned her emotionally. She thought of Victoria, who had poisoned her childhood. She thought of Elena, who had pushed her off a cliff. She thought of Marcus, who had betrayed her love. I'm ready, she said. Let's make them pay. The ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and hundreds of the city's elite in their finest evening wear. Richard Montgomery stood near the center, surrounded by business associates, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile confident and false. Victoria clung to his arm in a glittering gold gown. And there, accepting congratulations from a crowd of admirers, were Elena and Marcus, the perfect couple celebrating their engagement. Elena wore white. The audacity of it made Aria's blood boil, and Marcus looked every bit the successful businessman in his designer tuxedo. No one looking at them would guess they were both living lies. Ready? Damien asked, offering his arm. Aria took it, feeling the strength in his frame. Let's do this. The wedding was simple and private, held in Damien's villa with only his attorney and personal assistant as witnesses. Aria wore a simple white dress, nothing like the elaborate gown she had once imagined wearing when she thought she would marry Marcus. Damien wore a dark suit, and when he slid the ring onto her finger, his touch was warm and steady. For 1 year, he said softly, I promise to protect you, support you, and help you get everything you deserve. For 1 year, Aria repeated, I promise the same. The kiss they shared to seal their vows was brief and professional, but Aria felt something stir inside her chest, something dangerous and unexpected. She pushed it down. This wasn't real. This was strategy. She couldn't afford to confuse business with emotion. But as the days passed and they lived together in the villa, sharing meals and late-night strategy sessions, Aria found herself noticing things about Damien that had nothing to do with revenge. The way he took his coffee black and read the financial news every morning. The way he sometimes stood at the window late at night, staring at the ocean with a sadness in his eyes. The way he always made sure she ate properly and got enough rest, even when she was consumed with planning her return. You don't have to take care of me, she told him one evening after he brought her tea while she was reviewing documents. I know, Damien said simply, but you've spent your whole life with people who didn't take care of you. Someone should. The words cracked something open inside Aria's chest, but she forced herself to remain composed. This was temporary. This wasn't real. She had to remember that. The grand return. The night of the Montgomery Corporation's annual charity ball arrived like a storm on the horizon. Aria stood in front of the full-length mirror in Damien's villa, barely recognizing herself. Her dark hair fell in glossy waves over her shoulders. Her makeup was flawless, smoky eyes, perfect lips. She wore the biggest social event of the season. Aria would make her grand return from the dead, shocking everyone and reclaiming her place in society. But they wouldn't stop there. Damien had been quietly gathering evidence of Elena's deceptions and Marcus's financial crimes. It turned out that Marcus Chin's family business was on the verge of bankruptcy. He had been embezzling funds from various investors, including some of Richard Montgomery's business partners. The engagement to Aria had been his attempt to secure the Montgomery fortune before his house of cards collapsed. And Elena's pregnancy? Aria asked, her voice cold. Damien's smile was sharp. According to medical records my investigators obtained, Elena was never pregnant. She faked the entire thing to trap Marcus and secure her position in the family. She planned to fake a miscarriage after the wedding. Aria absorbed this information with grim satisfaction. They're both frauds. Exactly. And we're going to expose them in the most public way possible. Damien stood and walked around the desk to stand before her. But Arya, once we start this, there's no going back. They'll fight dirty. They'll try to destroy you again. Are you absolutely certain you want to do this? Arya stood as well, meeting his gaze with steel in her own eyes. She was no longer the timid girl who had fallen off that cliff. She had been reborn in fire, and now she was ready to burn down everything that had hurt her. I've never been more certain of anything in my life, she said. Let's destroy them. The marriage. Before they could execute their plan, there was one more piece to put in place: the marriage itself. Damien had been clear from the beginning that this was a business arrangement, a contract marriage that would last exactly 1 year. After that, they would divorce quietly, and Arya would be free to live her life however she chose. Marry into the Montgomery family. She brought wealth with her, her family's tech company, Hartwell Industries. It was worth millions when she married your father. Arya leaned forward, her heart racing. I never knew that. Father never mentioned my mother's family. That's because he erased them from history, just like he tried to erase you. Damien pulled out a thick folder. Catherine's parents died in a car accident when she was 22. She inherited everything. When she married Richard Montgomery, she signed a prenuptial agreement stating that if she died, her inheritance would be held in trust for her children until they turned 25. I turned 25 in 3 months, Arya whispered. Exactly. Which means in 3 months, you're entitled to claim your mother's entire inheritance, including 40% ownership of Montgomery Corporation, because Catherine used her company's assets to help Richard expand his business empire. Damien's gray eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Your father has been hiding this from you your entire life. He's been using your mother's money to build his empire while treating you like garbage. Rage, hot and pure, flooded through Arya's veins. How did you discover all this? Damien leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I have my reasons for investigating the Montgomery family. Let's just say your father made some enemies over the years, and I'm one of them. What did he do to you? For a moment, Damien's controlled facade cracked, and Arya saw genuine pain flash across his face. That's a story for another time. Right now, we need to focus on your revenge. Are you ready to hear the plan? Arya nodded, her hands clenched into fists. Tell me everything. The strategy. Over the next 2 months, Damien outlined their strategy with military precision. First, they would attend the Montgomery Corporation's annual charity ball. 6 months had passed since Arya Montgomery died and was reborn as someone entirely different. The transformation hadn't been easy, but every moment of pain had been worth it. Damien Cross hadn't just saved her life. He had given her the tools to rebuild herself from the ground up. The first month had been the hardest. While her body healed from the fall, Arya had to confront the emotional wounds that ran far deeper than any physical injury. Damien had hired a therapist, Dr. Sarah Chun, who specialized in trauma and family betrayal. Through countless sessions, Arya began to understand that she had been systematically abused and gaslit by her family for nearly 2 decades. You were conditioned to believe you were worthless, Dr. Chun had explained during one session. But that was never true. It was a lie they told you to control you, to keep you small so they could take what was rightfully yours. Alongside therapy came physical transformation. Damien introduced her to Marcus Vittorio, a renowned stylist who had worked with celebrities and royalty. Marcus took one look at Arya and declared, "There's a queen hiding under all this self-doubt. Let's set her free." Her long, dark hair, which she had always worn in a simple ponytail, was cut into elegant layers that framed her face and brought out her high cheekbones. A personal trainer named Jordan worked with her every morning, not to change her body, but to make her feel strong and confident in her own skin. A wardrobe consultant named Isabel filled her closet with designer pieces that made Arya feel powerful: sharp blazers, elegant dresses, and shoes that clicked with authority on marble floors. But the most important transformation was happening in Damien's private study, where he taught her the real game: business, strategy, and power. Uncovering the truth. Your mother, Catherine, was extraordinary, Damien said one evening as they sat in his study, papers spread across the mahogany desk. She didn't just marry me. Damien said it simply, as if he was suggesting they have lunch. A contract marriage. For 1 year, you'll be my wife. In return, I'll give you the resources, the power, and the connections to destroy everyone who betrayed you. I'll help you reclaim your mother's inheritance that was stolen from you. I'll help you become the woman they never believed you could be. Arya stared at him. Why would you do this? What do you get out of it? Damien's smile was cold. Let's just say the Montgomery family and I have unfinished business. Helping you is helping me. Do we have a deal? Arya thought of Marcus and Elena together. She thought of her father signing away her inheritance without a second thought. She thought of Victoria's cruel smile and Elena's hands pushing her off that cliff. She thought of a lifetime of being invisible, being unloved, being nothing. And then she thought of becoming someone new, someone powerful, someone who could make them all regret ever hurting her. Arya looked into Damien Cross's gray eyes and saw her own rage reflected back at her. She saw possibility. She saw revenge. Yes, she said, her voice steady for the first time in her life. We have a deal. Damien's smile widened. Welcome back to life, Mrs. Cross. Now, let's plan your resurrection. Arya turned her head slowly. Sitting in a chair beside her bed was the most striking man she had ever seen. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with sharp cheekbones, intense gray eyes, and dark hair styled perfectly. He wore an expensive suit that fit him like it had been made specifically for his powerful frame, which it probably had been. Who are you? Arya's voice came out hoarse. My name is Damien Cross. He poured water from a pitcher into a glass and held it to her lips. Drink slowly. The water was cool and soothing. When she had finished, Arya asked, How am I alive? Damien's expression was unreadable. I was driving along the coastal road that night when I saw you fall. I managed to reach the bottom of the cliff in time. My security team pulled you from the rocks and brought you here to my private villa. Why? Arya whispered. Why would you save me? You don't even know me. Something flickered in Damien's gray eyes, an emotion Arya couldn't identify. I know more about you than you think, Arya Montgomery. And I saved you because I have a proposition for you. A proposition? Damien stood and walked to the window, his hands in his pockets, his silhouette backlit by the ocean view. The Montgomery family has announced that you died in a tragic accident. Your funeral was yesterday. They're mourning you publicly while privately celebrating their freedom. Your father is restructuring his will to leave everything to Elena. Marcus and Elena are planning their wedding for next month. Each word was a knife in Arya's chest. They had erased her completely. They had taken her death as an opportunity. Why are you telling me this? Arya asked, tears burning her eyes. Damien turned to face her, and now she saw the steel in his gaze. Because I'm offering you a chance for revenge. A chance to take back everything they stole from you. A chance to make them pay. How? Elena moved forward suddenly, and Arya saw the intent in her eyes too late. Elena's hands shoved hard against her chest. Arya's feet slipped on the dewy grass. The railing caught her behind the knees, and suddenly, she was falling backward into darkness. The last thing Arya heard was Elena's voice calling out, Help! Someone help! Arya fell, but there was no one close enough to save her. She plummeted down the cliff, the city lights spinning above her, the cold air rushing past. This was how it ended. Unloved, betrayed, and erased. Then everything went black. The savior in the shadows. Arya didn't know how long she had been unconscious. When awareness slowly returned, she felt softness beneath her. A bed, not the hard rocks she should have crashed into. Her body ached, but the pain was manageable, distant, as if she was floating in warm water. Voices murmured nearby. Amazing she's alive at all. That fall should have killed her. How long until she wakes? Could be hours. Could be days. Her body needs time to heal. Arya tried to open her eyes, but her eyelids felt heavy as stones. She drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of gentle hands checking her pulse, changing her bandages, administering medicine. Sometimes she thought she heard footsteps pacing beside her bed, and once, she felt the touch of strong fingers brushing hair from her forehead. You're safe now, a deep male voice said. No one will hurt you again. It took 3 days before Arya finally opened her eyes. The room swam into focus. High ceilings, elegant furnishings, floor-to-ceiling windows showing an ocean view. This definitely wasn't the Montgomery mansion. She tried to sit up and winced at the sharp pain in her ribs. Don't move too quickly. The deep voice from her dreams spoke from beside the bed. You have 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, and various cuts and bruises. You're lucky to be alive. It's not like that. Get away from me. Arya pulled her hand free and stumbled backward. She needed air. She needed to escape. She turned and ran, her heels clicking on the marble floors, her vision blurred with tears. She heard voices calling after her, Marcus, Elena, even Victoria, but she didn't stop. She ran through the mansion, past the ballroom where the party continued in ignorant bliss, and out onto the terrace. The night air was cold against her skin as she kept running, down the garden path toward the cliff edge where the Montgomery property overlooked the city. Arya stopped at the railing, gasping for breath, tears streaming down her face. The city lights blurred before her eyes. She had known she wasn't loved, but she had never imagined this depth of betrayal. They hadn't just excluded her. They had used her, planned to humiliate her, and now they were going to discard her completely. Arya, Elena's voice called from behind her. Arya, wait. Arya turned to see her stepsister approaching, still wearing that same false concerned expression. Stay away from me, Arya warned. Elena stopped a few feet away, and suddenly, her mask slipped. The concern vanished, replaced by cold satisfaction. Oh, Arya, did you really think Marcus could love someone like you? You're so boring, so plain. I took him because I could, because everything you have should have been mine. What are you talking about? This mansion, this family, this empire, it should all be mine. Elena's voice rose with venom. My mother married your father, but you were always in the way. The daughter of his precious first wife. Even though he ignores you, you're still his real child, still the one who will inherit everything. I don't want any of it, Arya said, her voice breaking. I just wanted a family. I just wanted to be loved. Elena laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Well, you'll never have that. And after tonight, you won't have anything at all. Balcony doors, holding a glass of champagne she hadn't touched, watching her father network with his usual charm and confidence. Arya, Marcus appeared beside her, looking handsome in his tailored tuxedo. I've been looking for you. Have you? Arya asked, unable to keep the doubt from her voice. Marcus frowned. Of course. You're my fiancé. He took her hand, but his touch felt wrong, cold and obligatory. There's actually something I need to discuss with you. Can we go somewhere private? Arya's stomach tightened with dread, but she nodded. Marcus led her out of the ballroom and down the corridor toward her father's private study. As they approached, Arya heard voices inside, her father's deep tone and Victoria's lighter one. Can't keep this secret much longer, Richard, Victoria was saying. Elena is pregnant. Arya froze. Marcus's hand tightened painfully on hers. Pregnant? Richard's voice was surprised. But she's not even engaged. Who is the father? There was a pause. Then Elena's voice, sweet and trembling. It's Marcus, father. We've been in love for months. We wanted to tell you, but... Arya, the world tilted. Arya turned to look at Marcus, and the guilt on his face confirmed everything. He had been planning to break off their engagement. He had been sleeping with Elena, and now Elena was carrying his child. The fall. Arya, I'm sorry, Marcus began, but his words sounded hollow. I never meant for this to happen. Elena and I, we connected. I tried to fight it, but... How long? Arya's voice was barely a whisper. What? How long have you been sleeping with my sister? Marcus flinched at the coldness in her tone. For months. I wanted to tell you, but your father had already announced the engagement and the business merger. So you were going to marry me while having an affair with Elena? Rage, hot and unfamiliar, surged through Arya's chest. You were going to build your business on my family's name while betraying me. You're so quiet these days. She exchanged a knowing look with her mother. But I suppose that's good. We wouldn't want you embarrassing us in front of father's business partners tonight. Arya poured herself coffee, saying nothing. She had learned long ago that defending herself only made things worse. Elena thrived on conflict, on making Arya look foolish or emotional in front of their father. Where is father? Arya asked quietly. In his study, Victoria answered, barely looking up from her tablet. With Marcus, actually. They're discussing the merger. Marcus. Arya's heart should have warmed at the mention of her fiancé's name, but instead, she felt only emptiness. Marcus Chun was handsome, successful, and came from a good family. Their engagement had been arranged by Richard 6 months ago, as a business alliance. Marcus had been kind to her at first, taking her to dinners and pretending to care about her interests. But lately, something had changed. He avoided her calls, canceled their dates, and when they were together, his eyes seemed distant, always looking somewhere else. Or rather, at someone else, Elena. Arya had noticed the way Marcus's gaze followed her stepsister across rooms. She had seen the secret smiles they exchanged when they thought no one was watching. But she had said nothing, hoping she was wrong, hoping that for once in her life, something would work out. She was about to learn how foolish that hope had been. Shattered illusions. The evening gala was held in the Montgomery Mansion's ballroom, a magnificent space with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Arya had dressed carefully in a modest emerald gown, styling her long dark hair in a simple updo. She looked elegant but not flashy, exactly how she had been trained to appear. The ballroom filled with the city's elite, business tycoons, politicians, celebrities. Everyone wanted to be seen at a Montgomery event. Arya stood near the. Arya Montgomery had always been a shadow in her own home. While her stepsister Elena basked in their father's attention, wearing designer dresses and flashing her perfect smile at every family gathering, Arya spent her days in the library of the Montgomery Mansion, buried in books and business reports. At 24 years old, she had learned to make herself small, to speak softly, and to never expect love from the family that bore her name. The Montgomery family was one of the most powerful in the city. Her father, Richard Montgomery, owned a vast business empire that included hotels, real estate, and technology companies. He had married Arya's mother, Catherine, 25 years ago, but Catherine had died when Arya was only 5 years old. Within a year, Richard had remarried a beautiful woman named Victoria who brought her daughter Elena into their lives. From that moment, everything changed. Arya remembered being a happy child once, with her mother's gentle hands braiding her hair and singing lullabies. But those memories felt like dreams from another lifetime. Victoria had systematically erased Catherine's presence from the mansion, removing photographs, donating her belongings, and most painfully, turning Richard against his own daughter. Arya, dear, must you always look so plain? Victoria's voice cut through the morning air as Arya descended the grand staircase for breakfast. We have important guests coming tonight. Try to make yourself presentable, won't you? Arya nodded quietly, her fingers tightening on the railing. She wore a simple blue dress, elegant but understated, while Elena, seated at the breakfast table, sparkled in a designer outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The web of lies. Elena looked up from her phone, her perfectly made-up face twisting into a smile that never reached her eyes. Oh, Arya, I almost forgot you were home.